Yo, so finally got around to doing the build video. Sorry it took a while, I was under the weather. So the video is long as fuck, you obviously don't have to watch the whole thing, but for people who want to build it, you'll have to go over it and watch it a few times and build it a few times, because it's not straightforward. Now we start off with socket stacking, which is you grab your height with the triangle in front, you have to turn your mouse sensitivity all the way down, and then you crouch and you start placing your triangles. You do 5 across, get rid of the middle 3. Of course, when you're building this in a real server, you'll have to have your teammate destroying it for you. You place the 2 walls, square, triangle, 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 then you get rid of the middle triangle, and you place 2 half walls, get rid of the triangle and square on the side here. Now this will take a few times, you'll need to practice it, but you jump in, you tap D a tiny bit, forward back, and you should be able to place 2 triangles in a row. You have to replay that a few times, probably I don't want to make the video longer, so you have to look through. It takes a few times to get it right, but once you do, it should come out like this. Now you only need 2 of the triangles, so you get rid of 2, you keep a low one and a high one. That'll be your core. You have to do 2 squares out from your raised foundation, and then you do the footprint of the base basically, which is squares and then raised triangle foundations. You leave the triangles open in the middle there. You don't want to put triangles there. So that'll be what it looks like first. Now you need to keep this raised foundation so someone doesn't just run along and knock it out. So you do that little bit there, you upgrade it. Preferably to stone or metal, doesn't really matter. This can all be done depending on how much resources you have, whether you build up resources in a starter base and then you go and build your main. You need to keep one of these square foundations wood because that's your roof bunker. And then it's just simple honeycomb all the way around. Anything that will be covered in honeycomb later, you're going to have to upgrade to the final level that you want it to be upgraded to because you won't be able to reach it later on. This is your entrance, which again, everything is whatever resources you have at the time. I'm just upgrading it to what I would want it to be at a more finished state of the base. So that's your center core. Now you can seal that off straight away, but you also need to do this roof here, these roofs, which is going to give you the roof stacking for your inner honeycomb, which will make it a lot stronger. You don't do the roof straight away, otherwise you won't be able to do the socket stacking. So you can chuck your TC down at this point, and you should be able to get 3 doors on, which is pretty secure as far as someone raiding you early on goes. So that's your base footprint. Now you get to doing the multi-TCing, which I'm assuming most people know, because it's pretty straightforward. But here I'm just showing that you can add a few more doors. Because of the way socket stacking works, you have to do the multi-TCing before because you won't be able to place it with that square there, obviously. So you do triangle and 9 squares out. Then you will have to remove all of those, which you can demolish because it will be connected to TC. And then you do 4 half moons back in. But right now, what I would do is do all the multi-TCs out like this and upgrade them to wood. So even if you don't have the resources yet to do the multi-TC, you have them put down and you can finish the socket stacking part of the base. So once you do that, should look like that. You can upgrade all those squares to wood, and then you go around and do the socket stacking, which is 5 or 6 triangles, is it? You do 1 square out, and then so 5, and then 2 squares, and you do that all the way around the base. And that will be your socket stacked part of the base. Once you get that done, you can do the multi-TC whenever you have the resources to do it, or you can build the base up higher. It is a base that takes a fair amount of resources, so it really depends on how quickly you're concentrating on getting your good base up, or whether you're trying to get a good start to the wipe and your base will be a bit weaker. So you upgrade all these to preferably metal, but again, it doesn't have to be metal straight away. Get rid of all the wood, you should be left with that footprint. Now you do the multi-TC, which is again 4 half moons back from the square. If you did upgrade to that to wood, then you'll just have to knock that out. It shouldn't be too hard. So hopefully everyone knows how to do multi-TC at this point. I'm not going to go through and explain it. So once you do 4 half moons back, and then you do 2 squares, and you'll be set with your multi-TC part of the base. Demolish all of that. Obviously, you have to knock all that out. This is on a build server. Go around and repeat that with the other 5. There's 6, I believe. I can't even remember at this point. If you need to, just slow the video down, obviously, and you can work that out. Once you've done that, it's simply just sealing it with triangles, and this will create a pretty solid seal with only a small gap that can be sealed later on with foundations, door frames, sorry. Preferably you'd upgrade that to a stone. Sometimes you have to leave it there decaying for a bit until you have the resources in case you're doing something else. But that's what the base footprint looks like once you've got everything set. Now it's really up to how much you farm, how quickly you get resources. Now at this point, if I was getting resources quickly enough, I would get the TCs down so you can't get TC griefed by anyone. I think it's one of the most important things. You always think you don't need to do it until some idiot spends a little time getting some farm and then just TC griefs you, and then you've got that to deal with. There is 4 entrances that you have to do. So if you base it off the drop down into the core room, it's 2 on each side, and then 2 on each side again at the entrance. Then you just repeat that 5 more times and you've got all your TCs down, and hopefully you shouldn't get griefed. Now, once you've got all your multi-TCs down, the footprint should be coming together. To make the entrance, you half wall the raised foundation, put a ladder, hopefully you have that, seal that off there, and put another 2 door frames. Probably want to upgrade that to metal so people can't soft pick. An important part of this is that you make sure there is a gap in between the multi-TC part of the base and the core part, which you can see there above the door frame. You'll see that later on. Then you just finish sealing off the main core and upgrade whatever you need to upgrade. You can really leave the whole core hollow if you want to just get up to shooting floor quickly. Now you do the roof stack part of the base, which is simply chucking roofs down. You can upgrade that to anything because you can upgrade it through the floor later on. So you could upgrade that to wood if you're short on resources. Again, this can be upgraded to stone, it doesn't really matter. I'm just upgrading it to the final state. I'm going to leave a lot of the base open in this video for you to decide how you want to lay your base out, because everyone has what they want to do differently. So make sure to go around and half wall all of these raised triangle foundations. Once you've done that, you can finish sealing off your second floor. Again, I'm using metal, but at this point you can use whatever you have. As you see here, I was doing honeycomb and then I realized that I usually use this floor as bedrooms, which means I like keeping those open to make sealed locker rooms. You make your one entry to the next level and seal off the roof. Once you've done that, you get on to the more interesting part of the honeycomb, which I skipped through because I screwed up a little bit when I was doing it in the build. But basically, you have to make sure that these triangles that you're doing here are connected to the raised foundation part of the base and not the multi-TC part. So what you do is go around with stone on the multi-TC part of the base, which is here, you see, as I get stuck in a hole. And you make sure the triangles are not touching that part. And with the socket stacked part, the squares, you'll be connecting your floor off the inner part of the base, which you can see means it's lower, like there. You'll be able to tell when you're building it. Again, make sure that these triangles do not touch the multi-TC part of the base. They have to be off the center. Otherwise, the TCs will start destroying themselves because they're crossing over. Like so here. You want to make sure there's gaps in between the stone and the second part, the metal in this case. Once you've done that, you know you're all good and you can start building up. I tend to upgrade the multi-TC part to stone because it's easier to fill the TCs with that at the start of the wipe, and it's also part of the base that's left completely open, so you could do this entire outer ring with stone here if you need to and you don't have the metal, because it can always be upgraded later. Now once you've done that, you do your first layer of honeycomb, which is quite important because this leads to your loot rooms or whatever your loot rooms are on the second floor being roof stacked as well. Well, not roof stacked. So upgrade all of this to the end material you want it to be, because you won't be able to reach this later on. Then repeat the process you did before, making sure that none of these triangles touch the outer layer wall. Once you complete that, you make sure that you throw the roofs in and roof stack the honeycomb. That again means that instead of the square being a wall weaker than the triangle honeycomb, it is equal all the way around. Now once you've done that, you're up to the floor where you have your peak downs and your shooting floor. So you would want to farm a lot of stone and finish the outer layer that will create your peaks. do one layer of honeycomb on the opened multi-TC connection parts. This isn't absolutely necessary, but I find when I have a ladder BP that it's easy to do. You can even do it with stone barricade to make sure you can jump over to those. It makes it very annoying for raiders when they're onlining. I'm just showing you here, adding doors and stuff, but this is all the interior is completely up to you how you want to build. Where you want to put your loot, where you want to put your beds. It's very open for you to decide. Now we move on to the entry to the peaks and the entry to the last floor. In my design, this is where I put my shop fronts, and I move my TC up here later on. Again, I said in the build video, if you watch, or the video showcasing the base, that I've never had someone hit the 3rd floor, and in the last few months I've started putting my loot on the 3rd floor when I'm playing in a group, and no one seems to go for it, at this point at least. They will always hit lower on the base, especially if it's an online, because they want to get to TC. When you're doing it live on the server, I would recommend even doing this just with wood. I tend to, even though I've built the base many times, I tend to just make sure that I can get it all right before I go upgrading, to save yourself any kind of headaches. The peaks are very basic. You want to make sure that the squares are connected to the outer TC walls this time, unlike before. Now this outer layer leading into the peaks can be done all stone because it can be reached later on. This inner layer will need to be done metal or whatever the last quality you want it to be, because you won't be able to reach it again later because it's honeycomb. Then, like the 2 floors below, you just rinse and repeat. Make sure that none of the triangles touch the stone outer multi-TC part of the base. Repeat the roof stacking, and then seal it off. Always want to make sure you see that gap there. Do your entrances to the top floor. These little quarter walls will come in handy later on when you roof stack the top floor. As I said in my preview video of the my showcase of the base, you can technically roof stack or floor stack any of the levels, any or all of them if you wanted to. It will increase the upkeep obviously by a substantial amount every time you do a level. I tend to do it just above the level where I'm holding the loot. Now the entrance to the shooting floor has 3 entrances, 2 on each of the exits from the main base. And then 1 right in the middle on the other side. Now with this, it is a carbon copy of what's below. You want to make sure these triangles aren't touching. They can if they want, but it doesn't look symmetrical and I'm OCD as fuck. Shooting floor is very standard. I'm going to skip straight through it because you can do it however you want to. In this case, I just done squares. Finish upgrading the top level, and then this comes to the roof stacking part of the base. Because I have my loot on the 3rd floor, you go through with triangles again, make sure they're not touching the quarter walls, make sure they're connected to the window part of the base. Complete that all the way around, seal the squares off, add doors. If you don't add doors, you won't be able to place them once you've roof stacked, so you always have to remember to add doors first. That applies for every level that you want to roof stack. For me, it's only 1, so I just add the 4 and that's enough. This is the layout I use for turrets on the roof. You only need 4 turrets covering every angle, and you should be 100% safe from people landing on top. And they'll have to destroy 4 on the roof if they want to offline you. Now the roof stack part of the base, you start with off the triangles that has higher stability, otherwise the squares won't work, like so. And then you just seal all the way around. If you want to add more doors, remember, you need to put those door frames down before you do this part, add the doors, and then do it. For me, I just didn't bother doing it in the build. But you can add more, you just want to get those door frames and the doors down first before you stack the roof. The roofs are very simple for the top level. You can seal the gaps with roofs as well, which creates a nice looking design. This is not necessary, but if you want to, you use door frames to seal the multi-TC gaps, so there is no gaps at all. You can do that all the way up to the peak down level. I skipped adding windows and doors because you know how to do a shooting floor, it's very simple. Again, these are just the outer parts of the base that has the drop downs and stuff. If you want to see it more showcased, then you should watch the first video that isn't the build video. This is all, again, personal preference, how you like it. Finish the top. And from that point, you're almost done. You complete the little outhouses that connect you to the exits. These are good with the compound style that I do. means if you do get online, you have a lot of options for moving around in the compound and fighting people inside the compound. Once you've done that, you do the exits, I believe I do. No, I'm doing turrets. Again, this is just placeholder. You can do it however you want. Now the exits, there are 6 of on every multi-DC. You don't have to do it this way. This is just, I prefer more exits because it gives you more options. They're very simple. 2 doors and a garage door. You could even put a bed or a locker in here depending on what kind of loot you have. Repeat that on all of them and you should be left with a bunch of exits. Now this is just the style of walls that I do. It leaves space for 6 large furnaces right in these well-fitted corners. But that is completely up to you. I suggest you go on a build server and play around with it how you want. This leaves a perfect option for barricades though, and they fit very well. Again, I do it like this because it looks symmetrical and it's also practical. Same with the stone walls for the second layer. That's pretty much the video. Here I just show how I do the barricades, and I add some windmills later on. If you have any questions regarding the build, just let me know in the comments. I will be reading them. If you enjoy it or even have any suggestions, let me know. Thanks for watching.